Hi, this is Sue Jackson of the Book by Book blog, and I'm here today with a tag video, the brand new reader profile tag. So this has an interesting backstory. Melinda at A Web of Stories originated this tag, but she explained that she was inspired by a brand new booktuber, Hillary Green at Book Bustle. So check out Hillary's new channel, who wasn't satisfied with the Booktube newbie tag and so did a video of her own that she called her reader profile. So Melinda took that and turned it into a tag with prompts for all of us to answer. So this is all about what kind of reader are you? So let's get going. Prompt number 1, what for you makes a good book? Well, I find myself, when I'm describing the books I love the best, my favorite books, the ones that make my top 10 list for the year or my top 10 list of all times, I find myself coming back to the same kind of descriptions again and again. I like emotional complexity in a book and going along with that, depth of character. I like when I can really get to know characters and there is a lot going on emotionally, a lot to dig into. I am great when the book addresses some serious issues along the way, things like loss or grief or whatever. However, I have also come to realize, because I hear myself saying this over and over, especially here on BookTube, that what really wins me over is a sense of humor in a book. So yeah, bring on the dark stuff, bring on the emotional complexity. I'm fine if it deals with serious issues, but do that with a sense of humor, and that's a winner for me. I also like books, and I was realizing like some of my favorite books in very different genres, like science fiction thrillers, historical fiction. Some of what those books have in common is how thought-provoking they are, as well as the emotional complexity and the sense of humor. But I love a book that makes me think. Question 2, what are you currently reading? This is a quick one because I do Friday reads every week and I just recorded last week's, so you can look at that for more information. But I am currently reading a novel called The Audacity by Ryan Chapman. I'm reading that for Booktopia 2024, an event I go to every spring. And on audio, I've been listening to Dear Sweet Pea by Julie Murphy for both Middle Grade March and Fierce Reads. Question 3, what's the last book you didn't finish and why? Okay, so I have a very different answer than I suspect most other booktubers have, and certainly the ones I've listened to so far with this tag, because I don't DNF books very often. It's a pretty rare occurrence for me. I choose my books very carefully and I know what I like. That's not to say I don't read a great diversity of books, because I do. I like a wide range of things and I try a wide range of things. But the only time I won't finish a book is when it is truly painful for me to read, when I really just can't get through it. And I could not think of a book that I had DNF'd in the last few years. So I went to Goodreads. I do have a bookshelf for did not finish, and that's the whole shelf. Ever since I started using Goodreads, it's like 9 books. And one's on there twice, so it's 8 books that I haven't finished. The most recent is from 2018. And that is one that I mentioned in another tag recently, Fates and Furies by Lauren Groff. I only got a little past the halfway point in that one, went to the book group discussion, came home and just said, I don't want to spend any more time with these characters. And this is unusual for me, but I just found the two main characters extremely unlikable, and I felt like neither one of them had any redeeming features. There was no reason I wanted to read further. I didn't really care what happened to them. So yeah, it's rare, but it does happen. Question 4. What obscure book do you wish other people would read? Well, I have two answers for that because, well, actually, I've probably talked about both of them before on the channel. I was trying to bring up something new, but my favorite book is Replay by Ken Grimwood. Again, I just talked about it in the Girl Scout cookie tag. It is this really mind-bending book about, as the title suggests, a man who replays part of his life. So he's in his 50s, I think, 40s or 50s. He dies of a heart attack, and all of a sudden he's waking up in his college dorm room. He's like 18 or 20. And this keeps happening to him. Each replay is a little bit shorter than the one before it, but he keeps going through his life. What I love about this, and what I wish other people would discover about it, is how endlessly thought-provoking it is. Because each time he goes through another life, he has the chance to make different choices. And sometimes he doesn't want to. Sometimes he wants to try to repeat what happened before. But of course, things are always just a little different. So it is technically science fiction, which a lot of people just stay away from. But it did win the World of Fantasy Award. Yeah, it was published in 1986. So I know my husband and I both love it. I've read it 3 times so far. So I would love for more people to read this and then discuss it with me, please. And the other one, because I've just talked about that one in a recent video, the other is The Sense of Death by Maddie Dalrymple, which is the first book in her Anne Kinnear mystery series. Anne Kinnear is a woman who can sense spirits. So each book involves some kind of mystery that she solves by talking to dead people. I just love the premise. They're very well written. Maddie's actually a local author to me. She lives in Southeast Pennsylvania. Maddie also has a straight up mystery series, no supernatural. I think it's the Lizzie Ballard series. I still need to try that. But I've read 5 of these now, eagerly awaiting number 6, and they just get better and better. So I would love for more people to discover the Anne Kinnear series. Question 5, what's the longest book you've ever read? So this is a tricky question because, as you've probably noticed, the length of the book depends on the edition that you're reading, who the publisher is, how small the font is. You know, I've heard other people mention The Count of Monte Cristo for this question. Well, my copy of The Count of Monte Cristo, which I read for Big Book Summer 2 years ago, wasn't all that long in terms of page number. So it's a little bit tricky. I usually choose a classic for Big Book Summer, and very often it's something really big. So I tried to compare page numbers on some of these from what I could find online. But again, it's different depending on which publisher's version you look at. Gone with the Wind was very big. I mean, these are huge books, but my husband always gets me these, and I don't like these versions of classics. These are the out of copyright, anybody can print them versions. So they've got generic covers and no front matter, no back matter, not even a copyright page, just, yeah. So this one was, so this version of Gone with the Wind was 959 pages. David Copperfield is another enormous book. Now, this edition was only, let's see, 626, but it was very small print. Another reason I don't like this kind of format. When I looked up David Copperfield online, I found editions of the book that were over 1,000 pages, one over 1,200 pages. So I do think it's one of Dickens' longest. And then one other thing, I pulled this off the shelf behind me. This is not just The Stand by Stephen King, but it is the first complete and uncut version. Once The Stand became so popular, the publisher allowed him to publish it the way he wanted to publish it in the first place, unabridged, with everything that he wanted to include. So I don't even know if this version is available anymore. This was published in 1978. But my husband and I both read it all the way through and absolutely loved it. And it is 1,152 pages. So for the editions that I have, this is the longest. Question 6. If you could have a dinner party with 5 fictional characters, who would they be? At first I was just thinking, well-known characters from like classics, but then I heard Lori at Books, Ink, and Paper mention A.J. Fickery from The Storied Life of A.J. Fickery, and I completely agree with her. I would love to have dinner with A.J. and his family. So I started thinking of more contemporary novels. And basically what I did was looked at some of my all-time favorite novels and the characters I liked best there. And you won't be surprised to hear that this, after what I said earlier, most of them have a great sense of humor in the books, so I think it would be a really fun dinner party. So A.J. Fickery, Robin, the very precocious little girl from Hum If You Don't Know the Words. Robin is unintentionally hilarious in this fabulous historical novel, and I would love to have her at the dinner table. One of my favorite books of all time. All of these that I've mentioned so far, I've read twice, which tells you something. I want Henry and Claire to come to my dinner party because they have lived such a fascinating life, and I want to hear from Henry himself what it's like to suddenly disappear from your life and find yourself in a different part of your life. For the same reason, Jeff from Replay, he's lived many fascinating lives, and I would love to hear what that experience has been like. And finally, Demon Copperhead from the Barbara Kingsolver novel. I listened to it on audio last year, and that's the version of Demon that I want at my dinner party, the one that I heard in my ears for a month. Just an amazing, complex, interesting character, and yes, with a great sense of humor. Question 7, 5 books you'd want if stranded on a desert island. I struggled a little bit with this one, though I just showed you several books that I have reread. I don't reread a lot, so I have to think about something that would keep me interested on a reread, but also I went for long books that would take me a while to read, obviously. I'm bringing this unabridged version of The Stand because it's been decades since I read it. Would love to read it again. It would certainly keep me busy for a long, long time. My husband mentioned the Lord of the Rings trilogy. He's got this beautiful leather-bound edition here. So I'd bring that because I've never read it. Now, I'm not sure, I don't read a whole lot of fantasy, honestly, but I enjoyed The Hobbit, and I know the basic story of the Lord of the Rings from the movies, so I think I'd enjoy that. So just following along with that same theme of longer books, Moby Dick. I've never read Moby Dick. One of my closest friends loved it. I know people who've reread it and enjoyed it on rereading, so I think that would be a good choice. War and Peace, because I don't think I'll ever get to it. So if I were on a desert island, I'd have plenty of time. I know. I love Dickens, and Dickens has a great sense of humor. So, a really long Dickens novel. So I looked this up. The longest Dickens novel by page number is Bleak House, which I have not read yet. But the longest Dickens novel by word count is actually David Copperfield, which I read a few summers ago for Big Book Summer and loved, but I think this is probably the one I would bring along because there's so much to it and so much complexity, and it would keep me busy for a long time. Question 8, one book you could not put down? Just one? I mean, I read all the time, and there are lots and lots and lots and lots of books that I can't put down. I enjoy thrillers, which of course are meant to be really gripping. But you know, I would come back to these favorites of mine that I've all read twice, or Replay, which I've read 3 times. I mean, any of these, I was completely absorbed and couldn't put it down. By the way, Time Traveler's Wife still makes me sob uncontrollably, even though I've read it twice and know exactly what's going to happen. It's that good. Okay, question 9, 5 books or authors you will never read. So I struggled with this one because, again, like the question about DNFing, you know, I try not to exclude anyone without trying them first. So I don't know if there's anyone I wouldn't at least try. So instead, I went with books or authors that I would never read again. And many of these, much of this came from my short but potent did not finish list. So yeah, so number 1 is Fates and Furies. I tried it, didn't enjoy it, didn't finish it, but would not go back and finish it or read it again. Another is John Updike. I read Rabbit Run. You know, Updike, acclaimed American author, right? I found that book really misogynistic, a little racist. Yeah, the main character was this spoiled man-child. I have no desire to read any more from Updike. Been there, done that. This is kind of a surprise. Katharine Graham, the famous woman who was in charge of the Washington Post for so many years. One of my book groups read her autobiography, and there were some interesting parts, but I found her writing really tiresome. This book really needed a better editor. I'm guessing they were afraid to edit her too much, but they shouldn't have been. She needed editing. It was too wordy. It was very self-important. And granted, she's an important person, but it was filled with like bragging, name dropping. Yeah, I just didn't, I have no desire to read anything else from her. This one I'm sure nobody else has heard of, Giles Milton. We read a book for book group called Nathaniel's Nutmeg. It was a nonfiction book about the spice trade. There were some interesting tidbits in it, but the writing was really not very good. It was just too dry and textbook-like. It reminded me of why I hated history in school, as opposed to so many amazing historical fiction and narrative nonfiction history books I've read as an adult that are just absolutely fascinating. So yeah, he just wasn't it was an interesting topic. He wasn't a very good writer. No desire to go back. Question 10, if you were to write a book, what would it be about? Well, I have written a book. I've actually written and published 2 books. The first one I'm sure you have never heard of. This was back before I got sick in my professional days, the ISO 14001 Implementation Guide, Creating an Integrated Management System. Doesn't that sound fascinating? It actually is to me, but yeah, this was my area of expertise when I was a consultant, and environmental management systems were my thing. So published this way back in 1997 through Wiley & Sons, and it's still on sale today. I still occasionally get a teeny tiny royalty check from it. So that was my first book. And then in February 2020, great timing, right? I published my second book, Finding a New Normal, Living Your Best Life with Chronic Illness. And this one is near and dear to my heart. Not that that isn't. It had its time and place. But this is all about our experiences and my experiences leading support groups and practical tips to help people who are dealing with any kind of chronic medical issues. So yeah, in terms of fiction, I can't even imagine myself attempting to write fiction. Novelists to me are like magicians. I mean, I don't know how they do it. I really don't. Maybe someday I'll have more time and we'll learn something about fiction writing. But for now, I'm sticking with nonfiction. And I do have a third book kind of half drafted. Don't really have the time or money right now to focus on it. But that would be about effective treatments for the disease that my son and I have, ME/CFS. Because even now, I've had it for 22 years, there's not a single FDA approved treatment. So many people are just told by their doctors, there's nothing that I can do. Go home and live with it. And it's a devastating disease. So this is what my blog has been about for the last 18 years, and I would really like to put all that into a book. Finally, it's a tag, so I'm supposed to tag people. I will tag Jess at Book Girl TV and Greg at Another Bibliophile Reads. I always enjoy both their videos. Thank you, Hillary, for coming up with the idea, and Melinda for turning it into a tag. So I would love to hear your answers to any of these questions. First of all, you don't have to be tagged to do it. You know, if this sounds good to you, just jump in and enjoy, or just leave your answers in the comments down below. What's the last book you didn't finish? What's an obscure book that you wish more people would read? What's the longest book you've ever read? Any of those questions. I'd love to hear from you.